We have a special guest, a Vice Prime Minister, Minister of Foreign Affairs for European integration of Moldova. So, Mr. Popescu, greetings. I know that we've delayed some time, that's why I will try to get straight to business. We have a lot in common in your integration trend for Ukraine and for Moldova. So what's your assessment on the progress of Moldova on its way to the membership in the EU?
Okay. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure and an honor to be participating in your event. You hear me well?
Yeah.
Yes, okay. So before I talk about EU progress, I will start by saying that Moldova is able to work on our European integration agenda and to focus on implementing the European recommendations of the European Commission, first and foremost thanks to Ukraine. It's thanks to your capacity to resist, it's your capacity and the courage of Ukraine's society, government, people and the army to defend your country, but by doing so also defend Moldova and allow us to be able to focus on EU reforms in peaceful conditions. Thank you very much. Thank you to every single Ukrainian who is also defending us in the face of this Russian brutal aggression. Everyone in Moldova appreciates that, everyone in Moldova realizes that. When we talk about our EU accession agenda, just as Ukraine, we are doing a lot of things. We have a set of recommendations from the European Commission. We have 9. Just 2 months ago, the European Commission stated in the oral report that we have fulfilled 3 of the 9 recommendations. We have shown good progress on another set of 3 recommendations. But of course, one of the most challenging domains where we need to do a lot of work and where progress is very difficult is justice sector reform, is the fight against corruption. We have been able to show significant progress in doing that, in de-oligarchizing certain sectors of our economy, in launching some positive dynamics in the justice sector, but nonetheless, there is a lot of resistance in the system. There is a lot of corruption that is still determining and hampering our progress, but nonetheless, we have managed to prove since becoming a candidate country that progress is possible. We have achieved good results, and we are on track to make further progress on the justice sector reform. While we do that, we really work very, very well with our friends in Ukraine. Now in Moldova, I am double-headed. I'm Deputy Prime Minister for European Integration. And here I have my good friend Olga Stefanishyna as my counterpart, but at the same time I'm Foreign Minister. So with Dmytro Kuleba as my other counterpart, we really work very well on the full spectrum of foreign affairs and EU affairs coordination. We have been exchanging notes with Olga and Dmytro, and we have a constant exchange of views. I know you're about to finish the self-screening. We have not started, but already next week, colleagues from Olga's office will explain my colleagues in Moldova, how you did self-screening, and we will take on board your experience. And generally, as we do so, I come with a firm belief that our joint path to the European Union is mutually reinforcing. It's very important for us to end Ukraine, to be moving towards the EU, to consolidate our place in the European family of nations. And while we do that, help each other do this as quickly as possible.
Yeah, I hear that there is a lot of common with Ukraine. I just want to ask you, what problems do you see on the way? What are the most difficult aspects to reform for EU membership? What does Moldova see as the most difficult ones?
So we're structuring our path to the European Union on 3 levels now. The first level is that we are working hard to implement the 9 recommendations of the European Commission. They are mostly focused on justice sector reform, a fight against corruption, and de-oligarchization. And here, as I said, we do have significant progress, but quite a lot of work that remains to be done. We have a lot of resistance from the system, from the judiciary, within the prosecutors, some pockets of the prosecutors system. So this is where things, there are some bottlenecks, and of course, in a lot of areas, progress is not as quick as we would like. The second layer, where we work very hard, is to progress not just on the European Commission recommendations, but on all of the domains and the acquis implementation. We have set up 35 working groups to match the EU accession chapters. We have some 600 people in these working groups, and each of the working groups is responsible for accelerating the implementation of the acquis in Moldova. So we have the second layer is constant progress and acceleration of our implementation of the acquis, besides the implementation of European Commission recommendations. Here, one of the biggest challenges on the acquis is that Moldova has lost a lot of time in the last 9 years since signing the association agreement. We have had several governments that have been not very attentive to EU agenda, or they have even been sabotaging EU-related reforms. So we have a lot of things that should have been done in 2016, 17, 19. They have not been done. So we need to do a lot of catch-up. And we have a very limited number of people in the public administration. So I have jokingly said that if in the Ukrainian ministry you have 20 or 30 people working on a EU accession chapter, in Moldova you would have one person. But the length of the EU directive is the same. So in this sense, bigger countries have more human capacity to adopt laws, to process these laws, because they have more people in the public administration. Of course, bigger countries have other challenges. So here, I don't want to exaggerate my complaints, but we do have a significant insufficiency of personnel who can help us push forward. The third layer, besides the recommendation, the acquis, and the 35 chapters, we are working very hard to make sure that every single member state knows the nuts and bolts of our EU accession process. So we're really busy traveling a lot, inviting partners to Moldova, presidents, prime ministers, ministers, state secretaries, so that we constantly inform absolutely every single EU member state, work with the parliaments, and build a coalition of political support throughout the EU, and explain where our progress is. And our, of course, methodology is to say that the only way into the EU for us is by doing the hard work that needs to be done, and we are focused on doing that. So this is how we structure our EU accession. Political explanation of what we do, fulfilling the recommendations, and accelerating the implementation of the acquis.
Дякую. Ще один момент. Зараз
Another thing, thank you. There are many talks today about transport connection between Ukraine and Moldova, that we can extend it. Ukraine is looking for new ways to transit its products to West. It may be interesting for passengers as well, for people who are looking for new ways to get to Western countries. How realistic it is to implement this, to build this transportation way via Moldova from Ukraine?
This has been happening. We have been, from the day one of this tragic aggression against Ukraine, we have been very open to receiving refugees, but also making sure that exports and imports from Ukraine and into Ukraine are fast-tracked. In our view, of course, Ukraine is making a huge military effort, but it's equally important for Ukraine to be able to sustain its economic vitality, its exports. So we are very conscious that Ukraine's capacity to import and export, export grains and cereals, import fuel and other things is a fundamental interest, not just of Ukraine and Moldova. Moldovan infrastructure has not been very well developed, so we've been working, for example, with Ukrzaliznytsa to modernize and unclog some bottlenecks in our railway system. Presidents Zelensky and Maia Sandu have agreed before on building a bridge between between Yampil and Koseuț in Moldova, so we need a direct bridge to Ukraine that would fast track. We have also not introduced any restrictions on Ukrainian cereals. and we are very conscious that Ukraine's capacity to export cereals, including from Moldova, is a key interest for Ukraine and for Moldova. So we've been working to fast-track access to the river port infrastructure on Danube. We have a small port in Giurgiulești, and a lot of the Ukrainian import-export operations have been happening through this. We've built a new temporary bridge to Romania. It's a floating bridge, so that we can fast-track again the flow of goods in and out of Moldova, and a lot of these goods are Ukrainian. And we are rolling out now with Ukraine, with Ukrzaliznytsia, with international donors, a big modernization, a series of modernization projects for our railways and infrastructure, so that even looking at the next 10, 20 years, Ukraine, Moldova, Romania, countries across Europe, countries across the Middle East, countries across Africa do not depend only on the capacity to trade through the Black Sea. And we want to make sure that there are significant infrastructure development, so that the economic interest of Ukraine in the next 10, 20 years, especially on food markets, but not only, can be ensured through a developed land infrastructure. The same goes for the plans for Ukraine's future reconstruction. I've been to the Ukraine Recovery Conference in London, and one of the small conversations we had is, of course, that we in Moldova want to make sure that Moldova is not an infrastructural bottleneck for the reconstruction of the sovereign Ukrainian regions, especially of Odessa and Mykolaiv. And this is where we also start working with Ukraine and Romania to make sure that Moldova's infrastructure is as comfortable for Ukraine's future infrastructure and recovery projects as necessary.
І останнє питання.
The last question, Mr. Popescu. So today we heard figures that Ukrainians mostly are Euro-optimists. So what will you tell about Moldovan Eurosceptics? Do you have a lot of Eurosceptics in Moldova?
We have a firm majority of citizens of Moldova supporting European integration, and that has been proven for the last almost 3 decades. We do have pockets of skepticism towards Europe. We still have some sectors of our society quite affected by fake news, by propaganda. But nonetheless, it's very clear that every time Moldovan society has always gone back to voting for pro-European forces, keeping them in power, supporting the reforms process. And even those who are more skeptical of Europe, and I'm saying this in Moldova constantly, even those who are not necessarily the best and most dynamic Euro-optimists want to live in a country that is democratic, that is free. They want to live in a country that respects their political choice, even if the choice is not to want to join the European Union. They don't want to be bombed. They don't want to be beaten up by police, as it happens in autocratic countries. And that is why we also inside Moldova, we talk about the fact that even those who don't support EU accession want to live in a country that is democratic, and only our accession to the European Union can guarantee them this right.
Нема що додати. Дуже дякую.
Nothing to add. Thank you so much, Mr. Popescu. Thank you for giving your precious time. I apologize for the small delay, but this was important for us to get your words. So, Mr. Popescu, Vice Prime Minister of Moldova, Minister of Foreign Affairs and European Integration, he was with us. Thank you.